Hey, before we get to today's great episode, wanted to let you know of a new exciting thing going on for the Lounge. For the first time since we started this podcast, the Lounge has entered into a partnership with a company that is aligned in how we think. Completely stop gambling. So Betttr is giving away 200 free subscriptions for life to the first 200 users from this podcast. Download Betttr, find the link in the show notes, or searching Betttr in your app store. So it's Betttr, BETTR, quit gambling. Search for that on the App Store or click into the link in the podcast show notes. So I'll see you on Betttr. And now to today's episode. Welcome into the Gambling Recovery Lounge. My name is Eric, and I'm a compulsive gambler in recovery. My recovery date is June 15th of 2021. Welcome into the lounge for experience number 23. And I think I can for sure say that my guest today has me probably more nervous than I've been going into any these experiences that we've had in the lounge so far. Not because he does anything to make me nervous specifically. It is because of who he represents in my journey of almost 5 years in recovery. And this is a gentleman who has helped tens of thousands of people along his journey of recovery. And he started his recovery journey over 50 years ago. And a couple months ago, I was honored to be a part of a meeting in which he celebrated 15 years of abstinence. And all you math wizards out there doing the math on that, you can probably figure there were some relapse along the way. And we're going to certainly talk about that along the journey of his story. But I want to welcome in to the lounge my friend, brother, and certainly one of a handful of people I consider to be amongst my most significant mentors in my recovery journey process. And that is Frank S. Frank, welcome into the lounge. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. You're not helping me, Eric, with my need to work on humility. Very, very kind words, and I hope I get to live up to a lot of what you've just shared. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. All right, so we're gonna do what we always do with every guest, Frank, and I asked you to prepare your recovery song that you relate to along your journey. So if you could tell us what that song is and a little bit about why you chose it and its importance to you.
Most of the listeners, I imagine, weren't even born when this song came out. It's a John Denver song. Came out in 1983, called "It's About Time." And John Denver was one of the early environmentalists, and the song really had a lot to do with that. But to me, it meant so much more than that. And I'll just share a little part of it that's significant and how it ties into my life and recovery. There's a section that goes like this: "It's about time we realize it. We're all in this together. It's about time we find out. It's all of us or none. It's about time we recognize it, these changes in the weather. It's about time, it's about changes, and it's about time." And that's kind of been the story of my recovery.
I love that. So John Denver in 1983, It's About Time.
Yes.
All right. I will be putting that on my playlist because
But
I'm not
time
sure.
is a it could be interpreted in so many different ways. I mean, it is the play on words. It's about time. Well, it's not about time. I mean, having 5,556 days, right, is not significant. But it's about time that I continue to do the work and changes and waiting around instead of waiting around for that to take place. So.
Right. Well, I'm excited to jump into all your timeline, all parts of it, all facets of it. I've been blessed to be around you in my almost 5 years in the program, and I know a chunk, but I know I'm going to learn so much more today. And most importantly, all of our listeners are going to get to hear just some amazing stuff. So Let's just start with your background, as far as your childhood, a little bit about the family history. I know there was a lot of gambling within the components of your family. So if you just want to tell the listeners a little bit about that journey for you, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Well, I'm 71 years old, and I came to LA area when I was about 6 months old. They probably came here to just escape probably all their debts and gambling because both of them were compulsive gamblers, and also because my grandparents, who originally came from Russia, really worked hard and suffered a lot, and especially went through the depression in New York, came finally to California to retire and only to have my parents dump four kids on them in their mid to late 60s, and that went their retirement. And I'm grateful for that experience and the sacrifices that were made. But growing up as a kid, that was very difficult. I felt different. I remember even going to school. There were times, and I would lie, like, "How come? Where's your parents? Oh, they're traveling to Europe." And that explained why my old-fashioned grandmother with her clumpy shoes, I was just so embarrassed. It was a challenge, and I was very introverted throughout the process, very low self-esteem. I didn't know how to deal with emotions, and that's what probably led to the early gambling. I mean, I had a few key experiences that I'm pretty sure informed who I am today and what I've been through in my life. I don't remember much as a kid, but one of the big experiences that stood out was being dropped off at the movies with my probably older sister and brother. I'm guessing I'm around four, thereabouts. And when the movie was over, we were waiting outside. And we were waiting and waiting and waiting, and the parents never showed up. Now, maybe it was 5 minutes in a kid's mind. Maybe it was 3 hours. I have no way of ever knowing that.
Mhm.
But that has made a difference in my life. And I always pride myself on being on time or early,
Mhm.
just because of that experience.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. Now, you said both of your parents were compulsive gamblers, and then that led to them, in essence, abandoning you and your three siblings. Is that
yeah,
correct?
that's correct. And I
Okay.
don't know if they ever gambled together. I don't know much about them at all or what they did. I was made aware of the fact that they were gamblers. I remember an early experience when I was at a playground. My first gambling experience was throwing coins against the wall.
Mm.
And my grandmother and my grandfather had been walking by and they saw me. And my grandmother gave me this stare. And I can still feel it to this day. And she said to me, looked me right in my eyes and said, "You're going to turn out to be just like your father." And that just
Wow.
hit me to the core. But
Wow.
my mother was just as bad as she was, her own daughter. But she couldn't accept the fact that that was the case. And she had to take on these four kids because of my father. But it was much more than that.
And
Um,
what are the age ranges between you and your three siblings?
yeah, my older sister's 3.5 years older. My brother's 2.5 years older. And then my baby sister, Sandy, is 3.5 years younger. And 2 months ago, it was her 10-year anniversary of her passing.
Yeah. Wow. So you were all relatively close together in age, and so experiencing the same thing. So did you, even though the your parents abandoning all of you was early, do you have remembrances of any of their actual gambling activity, or is that just too far in the history books to ever even have real memories of?
Yeah, I wasn't really aware of much of it except being raised in an apartment with my two siblings. My brother had some challenges and he was put in a foster home. So at that point, my grandparents were just raising the three of us. But from time to time, my mother would show up, almost like a boarder in a house,
Mm.
because she lost all her money and lost her apartment, and she would move in. I don't remember ever getting a hug from her or even my grandparents. They were, kind of stoic. And that's informed who I am today because I pride myself in being one of the biggest huggers.
Yes, you
Although my
are.
my son beats me in that regard. But so just knowing that, every time she came back, it's because she'd been out there gambling
Mm.
and had lost her money. But there was one incident too that really stands out is as a kid, I used to save little, coins. You get a nickel, dime, a penny, a quarter. I had no idea what the value was. And in the old days, they had these Band-Aid boxes made out of tin. And, we put a little slot in there and put coins in there, and it would fill up. And one day, it was all gone. And I mean, this took a long time to accumulate. I don't know how much money, and maybe it was $3 or $4 worth. Well, like a week later, I looked at it again, and there was like maybe five, six $1 bills. But to me, that I didn't know the value of money. It was like there was a message that was sent, like, what's the point in having any kind of money? It's going to be taken away from you anyway. And so, yeah, my mother had taken it to gamble and replaced it with these dollars, and maybe I was ahead, but in my mind, that wasn't the case at all.
And I know you've talked about openly, so maybe you can share with the audience when your parents both passed, that was sort of in the midst of gambling as well, right?
Yeah, I want to at least address the fact that my father now lived nearby, and that was very, very painful because he
Hmm.
started a new relationship and had a new family. And maybe I don't think he was less than 2 miles away from where I lived, and maybe would see him every 2 or 3 years. I imagine there was a lot of guilt on his part. But both of them, as they died in their 60s. My father was mostly a racetrack gambler, horses, and he got a heart attack while waiting in line at Hollywood Park,
Mm.
and immediately was taken over to Daniel Freeman Hospital, and the next day he died. And at his funeral, I felt nothing. I mean, I didn't. There's a certain amount of sadness because that I was still relatively young, and I'd been to GA, but not, for any period of time. That they never had the opportunity or knew about or wanted to get into the program.
Got it.
My mother lived a few years longer, and she died of cancer. And she went from, maybe weighing 150, 160 pounds in a matter of months, getting down to 80 pounds. And the entire time, she just wanted to go one more time to the card clubs and play cards one more time. That was
Mm.
her like dying wish. But what a way to go for two compulsive gamblers, just one at the racetrack and one just wanting to make one more bet.
Wow. Okay, so now you and your siblings, you're growing up with your grandparents. So how does gambling start to become more prevalent in you and your siblings' lives? What were you noticing, experiencing as you continued to?
Yeah, well, my siblings weren't really involved. My sisters, at least, weren't involved in gambling early on. My brother was. He would be in the bowling alley, and he was a guy that would gamble on bowling and pool and all that. And he was very scary, and he would come sometimes to the house and threaten me, and he needed money, or it's something I might have owned that he would sell to pay off a debt or to get back in action. So I was aware of that. But my gambling, proliferated in high school. Got involved in card games with friends, and I was just so desperate to be in action. I mean, there were times that I was in games playing with friends and a few other friends. How could you play with those guys? They're cheaters, And I said, yeah. And my mind was, I just wanted to be in action, and I felt that I could beat them anyway. That's how sick I was. Action was the most important thing, and then when I became, close to age where I could actually gamble in the local card clubs, I started doing that. And you know what my biggest fear was, Eric? That I might actually win and they'd take all my money away because they realized I was underage. So I think there's a part of me that made sure I lost all the time so that wouldn't happen.
Got it.
I mean,
Okay.
I worked hard from an early age.
Yeah.
And, I had a paper out when I was 13 years old on a bicycle, largest paper out in the city. And I mean, I always made money. I worked all the time at school, but it all went to gambling.
So as you were, I guess, starting to compulsively gamble even very young, did you understand at the time what was actually happening to you? Or did you just think, well, this is fun. I'm escaping whatever you may be escaping from, as you talked about. Even though you didn't understand maybe what your parents were going through at the time, did you know that the term compulsive gambling, that it was an addiction? We'll get into your first GA meeting that I know you went into, but before that, did you understand really what was going on for yourself?
No, I don't think I had an understanding, but I knew it was wrong. I knew what I did was wrong because I knew, how I felt. And I would, a lot of times when I'd go to the card clubs or eventually to Vegas all the time, other than going to the tables as fast as I can, I'd usually go to the bathroom. I'd have a stomach ache. I would throw up. I mean,
Mm,
my body was telling me it was wrong,
right.
but that didn't matter. I needed to go.
Got it.
And once I was in action, then it shut out the world. I didn't have to feel any pain. There's nothing in my life that I couldn't shut out while I was gambling. And it was the most amazing escape.
Did you know at the time, as those feelings were being suppressed and the numbing out, that I know for myself was true? I've talked about that a lot in recovery. That my fear, I was running from myself and trying to escape the fact that I was identifying myself as being gay, and I had no idea what to do with that. And so I was running for a decade, and that ran me right into gambling. Did you know what you were running from and trying to escape from in your life?
Just there was a lot of just a lot of pain. Being different. That was something I had no uh, way to express my feelings, and so I just shut down. But they had to surface some way, and when they did, that was the place that I could go to have them soothed or at least ignored for a while. And as long as I was, knowing that I'm going to get into action, raising the money to do it on the way there in the process, and even after losing, which a lot of times early on would have a sense of relief, just the excitement of, okay, well, here's another way I can get some more money and I can be back in action. So I could kind of stay on that high, that escape, indefinitely until there wasn't any more options for staying in action.
Got it. Okay. So I know you went into your first GA meeting, I think, when you were 19. How did that come about?
I knew I had a problem and I became aware of it. I don't remember too much about it at all. I just remember being, that age when I started. And, again, I had done a lot of the things that people have done, the 20 questions talks about and things like that. And I don't know that I was in the mindset of like, this is not for me, but I just, wasn't ready for it. I didn't understand how serious this problem was. And, like many of us felt that, I could probably manage it.
Sure. And do you remember being that young at that first meeting? Was it mostly unrelatability because most people were much older, or you were hearing stories that you felt like were just so different from what your stories was, or it was just I'm just not ready to hear this, the truth about what I am.
Yeah, I don't know that I felt any issues about the differences being young. I think mostly is maybe I hadn't done a lot of the things that some have done yet, and I had to, go out there and prove my worthiness at the end of the meeting. So,
or earn your seat at the table, as we say.
yeah.
Okay, so that was one into so you go into a meeting and then you go back out. And so now you're gambling. Now you get in obviously into legal gambling age, right? 20 into your 20s. So what now starts to take shape in your life? What does that start to look like as far as your living situation? Where you now, at what point did you move out from living with your grandparents, and kind of what starts to happen with your professional life, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay, well, I always did well in school. I was fortunate, to get some scholarships and went to UCLA for a couple of years and graduated from USC. But most of my time at USC was in the Student Activity Center, and they had card games. During lunch, I was always in those card games and always found ways to raise money and probably lost almost all the time. It just that didn't stop me from keeping going back. And I was able to graduate. Fortunately, I got into the restaurant business for a little while, and the gambling continued. And I was fortunate enough to get into the banking world at the age of 30. I became vice president of investments for a savings and loan in Beverly Hills, and I was making a ton of money. Probably, we're talking 40 years ago, probably 30 to 40,000 a month back then.
Mm, wow.
And I got paid once a month. And within 2 days of that, I was broke because I went straight to the casinos and lost it all probably as quick as I could. And the greatest pain to this day that I can still feel when I think about it was all the people that worked with me and under me at the bank thought I was like the biggest miser in the world. I was making more than the founder and the president of the bank
Mm,
at that time.
mhm,
And so, and here I am driving this beat up old car,
mm,
bringing in lunch to work, living with my grandfather. Everyone thought that I was this miser and that I was
mm,
socking my money away in apartment buildings and all that. It's just some
mm.
cheapskate. And it was the most painful thing in the world to hear that and to feel that, but only to be back doing it again the
Mhm.
next month. And
And were you consistently going to just the local card clubs
no,
in
at that
the LA
time,
area, or now you're going to Vegas and the whole
yeah.
shebang? Okay, got
I
it.
always had trouble at the card clubs or even playing poker because I just, I always feel that almost a lot of gamblers are just like me. And the worst feeling in the world for me is to beat another gambler, but when I was in Vegas, it's beating the house. And so that became much more comfortable.
Got it.
And
Yes.
so
Yeah, I've told the story. I remember playing poker for the first time in Vegas when I was 21, and I hated it. I was so intimidated to be around a table, not because I didn't know the games. I knew how to play because I played family card games and all that, but it was that feeling of I have to beat all these other gamblers. And I was so uncomfortable. So I never really played poker after that in that kind of an environment. I wanted, like you, my selection was sports gambling and horse racing because that it was just me against the horse or me against the team, right? And it was that isolation. Or if I played in the casino, it was roulette or maybe a little blackjack. I relate. Now you played a lot of craps, is that right?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was my game. Once I found that, it was constant action.
Mm,
You can bet on so many different combinations all the time, and I knew the odds, and
mm,
and there were just so many times when, and I have no patience to this day as one of my biggest character defects. And the game could be as hot as possible, but if and it would be slowed down because people would show up and they'd start screaming, and then it would delay the bets. And I was the type of guy, even on a hot table, I would just leave it to go to an empty table so that I can just play. And it was as fast as you can. And the
wow.
pit bosses used to get mad at me because I would just ask for the dice right away, throw it, and they used to call me Press Mr. S. I mean, I would just press the bets until the limit. And when
Mm,
I lost, which was about 98% of the time, I was done with it. I didn't want it to last forever. I just wanted over time, I just wanted to be over with.
mm.
And the few times I won, when I did, it was a huge win. And my big
Interesting.
win, that feeling of having that win was the most incredible. I had this guy from Texas, this probably a 56-year-old guy with one of these big 20-gallon hats or something. He says, "Man, I've been watching people play and gambling all my life, and I've never seen anybody gamble like you." And of course, when you're winning, and everyone's a great gambler,
Right, right.
so
That's right.
I was very, very generous too. I mean, I tip all, in those days, the dealers, they didn't put it into a big pool. It was table by table. And sometimes these guys would walk away with tens of thousands of dollars. And I might even actually lose, but when I was winning, they'd get their cut, then I'd lose mine, but like I don't
Mm,
get any of that back.
right, right.
A few years later, I met this guy. I was down on my luck in the Horseshoe Casino, and the dealer says, "Frank, oh my goodness, I'm so happy to see you." And he says, "You helped put one of my kids through college." He says, "If I ever saw you, I promised myself if I could help you in any way." And he saw that I was broke, and he just handed me $200.
Mm,
Um,
wow.
but I had this one casino kind of boss there. He says, "Frank, after I had that big win, he says, take the money and never, ever come back." And I was back in a couple of weeks.
Mm,
I brought my ex-wife back and I said, "Listen, I gotta," because they sent me this big check. I didn't want to have all this cash. And I said, "Come back with me. You can protect me. We'll get all the money out in cash. So I don't have to worry about the taxes and all that." And she came back and I got lucky and I won another because I had to play it and maybe another 50,000 on top of that. And I had enough money for a huge down payment for a home, pay off all my debts, buy any kind of car that I wanted, and it wasn't enough. And then I just had this bad streak that happened right after that. I ended up going home with half of the money, but and gave it all to her. But
mm.
there was still the hope that we could get back together. She had a condo which was overlooking there used to be a meeting at a temple on Pico Boulevard, and her condo was overlooking the parking lot where that meeting was. So she could see me go to meetings, and we were going to rebuild our life. But even though I didn't have any money, I had some big commission check come through from referral, and I took that and went back. And in those days, no cell phones. And she didn't hear from me for like a day and a half. She came over to my house and she took all the money. It was in a big bag of cash, threw it on the bed, and she says, "Take it. I don't want to ever see you again."
Wow.
And now I had the freedom to gamble and ended up blowing all that money. And then eventually became a partner in the bank and embezzled a large sum of money. And that's an amazing story in terms of how I didn't go to jail for that. An amazing set of
Let's
circumstances.
hear it. So, what was that set of circumstances?
Well, I could have continued on probably for 6 months to a year and taken millions. But there was just one point that I didn't want to deal with this anymore. And so I decided that I was just going to leave the country. And so I had just a little bit of cash, writing a couple bad checks, and I started to go up north, and I was going to go to Canada. And the most painful loss I ever had was a $2 bet in Lake Tahoe on the way up to Canada. And it was my last $2 that I had. And the craps, they call the winner 8 or whatever on that roll. But as he went to move the dice, it turned slightly and it became a loser 7. So in winning, instead of winning that $4, I ended up losing my last $2. And that's after losing hundreds of thousands of dollars just 2 weeks prior. And at that point, I said, that's it. I don't have any money to go to Canada. I couldn't just leave my grandfather. It would be too painful to him. I was living with him at the time. And I decided to turn myself back in. And I did. And I went to GA, and I went to 7 meetings a week. I was all over the place. I got people to help me in so many beautiful ways. I even had this a federal public defender that just had gone into private practice that I was referred to. And I only had a few $1,000s from a friend to help me. He says, "Listen, I don't want your money. Use it for a psychiatric evaluation." And then I also had a letter from Harriet Rosetto before she had founded Betttr. She was just in the beginning of getting into that recovery world. And out of the 18 judges on the federal panel, there was only one that would have given me the sentence that I got. And, anybody who plays craps knows the odds of an 11 is 1 in 18. And out of those 18 judges, I got her. And
Wow.
She saw that I wasn't a bad guy, that I had a problem, that I was sick. And this 3 months later had this happened. It was when they had just going to introduce the minimum federal sentencing guidelines, and the judges had no discretion. So I should have spent at least 10 years in prison. But she gave me probation, and it was strict. I mean, I couldn't even borrow a penny without, showing or talking to my probation officer. They wanted me to go to 3 meetings a week. I went to 5 to 7. I mean, I turned my entire life around. I became Mr. GA. I married. I started to have a family, and you would have thunk that would have been enough.
And around what years are we talking about when this?
86, 87.
Okay, so you get the probation sentence.
5-year probation.
5-year probation. Now you're fully immersed in GA, and you have a wife. You start having kids. So life's going seemingly well. And are you now, from an employment standpoint, were you barred from working in the financial sector?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So what happens then?
I worked for a friend who was an attorney and helped build his practice up. And so,
Okay.
I started to make money again. But, I was on probation for 5 years, and the judge clearly told me that if I catch you gambling, I'm just going to throw you back in jail and throw the key away.
Okay.
And I made it 20 months. And I flew to Vegas. The stress of life was just too great. I flew to Vegas. And of course, on the way back, somebody in GA is on that plane. So I'm like panicking,
really?
Everyone knew my story, that if I get caught gambling, this is what could happen. Fortunately, that didn't happen. I returned to meetings. I must have gambled during that 5-year period, maybe 3 or 4 times, always going back to a meeting the next day. I did not want to be like my parents. I wanted to be the responsible dad. I didn't want to desert my kids. And if you ask them today, I would they would pretty much tell you that that was the case. But my wife and we're very good friends today, as you know,
Mhm.
every Monday night after doing a good job of making amends over the years. My ex-wife and my two kids that are in their mid 30s have a weekly family Zoom ever since COVID began 6 years ago. So
Yeah, no,
um, we're
that's
very, very
amazing.
close family.
So I do want to ask you when you have 20 months, you're as you said, you're kind of all in on GA, life's good, family started. Do you remember at the time this conscious decision that overtook you that like that because that sounds like the uncontrollable urge to go gamble, which would suggest that you were not yet at step one of powerlessness yet you had 20 months in the program. What do you remember about what was maybe not working for you at the time in the program that was a gap perhaps that still caused you to get on that plane? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was so involved, but it was all about, which is my whole life, it's been about helping others and not taking care of myself. And so I used to say I was like the 1 in 12 guy. And truly, if I went back and gambled, am I really working step one, you
Right,
know?
right.
But I just got so involved and I didn't work on myself. I didn't work the steps. I didn't have a higher power, but I was involved. And that stuff builds up. That pain, the fears, the discomfort, all that sort of stuff just builds up and it needed a place to go. And that's why after that period of time, I went out.
But you were saying now each time the stint was short and you were right back at meetings
Yeah, oh
in
yeah.
and
I
out.
mean,
Okay.
intended to every single time that I came back. I mean, I didn't plan ahead. Oh, if I fall back, I'm going back, because
Right.
who knows? I'm hoping to win, I guess, and then I'll be fine and never have to go again, right? But that wasn't the case, obviously. And so, but yeah, I'd go to the meeting the next day as soon as possible. My intention was I was going to lie or downplay it or something like that. Maybe I've
Mm,
lost 10,000 that I didn't have to lose. I might have said, yeah, gosh, I got involved in some Monopoly game at McDonald's, so I'm going to start my time over or something. Or I flipped the coin by accident. But
mm,
I didn't. I came clean. I said, why am I here? What do I need to lie for? And listen, I have no judgment against anyone else that lies. That's just part of the disease. It's
mhm.
just that I'm glad that it never got to that point for me. For me, it was like, if I'm going to come back, I need to kind of do this all right. And
Right.
but still, coming back, I didn't. I had so many amazing people in my life, so many great sponsors, so many people that really cared about me and would have done anything to help me. I wasn't ready. I
Mm.
just wasn't ready. And it took a long time to get to that place.
So what happened with the 5 year probation? You were able to clear that
Yeah, I
or
was able to
okay.
clear that. I had to make some minor restitution, got all that off. Yeah, that worked out okay. And
Okay.
but beyond that time, what happened? I was very involved with my kids. My wife and I split up. Our highest priority has always been our kids, even to this day. And we have an amazing relationship to this day because
Amazing.
I'm blessed in that regard.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so then what starts to now happen? Because now we're in what the 90s, or now we're further ahead than that in the
Yeah. So what happened was that as the kids get older, they become teenagers. They don't not so much interested in mom and dad, and so I decided to move back to the West Side. I raised them in San Gabriel Valley, and so I came out here, and I had a lot more freedom. And I working on somewhat of an entrepreneur, working on some business ideas and things like that. But every time something there would be an obstacle that it was difficult to face, I'd run to gambling. Well, I'll solve this problem, okay, by going out and winning. And all it did was make it worse. And then I found very clever ways to find merchandise that I could easily sell on the internet to the point where it's like an ATM with no limit. Thousands and thousands of dollars a day I could make easily. And I would just blow it all. Years ago, I met a guy that was a counterfeiter and he was amazing. And he spent some time in prison because of that. And he told me, and I met him in GA, of course. He said, listen, I had all the money I could ever want, and it was never enough to support my gambling habit.
Mm,
So that really hit me. And I was in that place where I could just, if I lose that, okay, I'll just go out and do some more stuff. And so, but eventually that caught up with me. When it finally did, I thought, gosh, I had been doing this probably for about 3 or 4 years. And I said, yeah, gosh, that's a long time doing that. And we're talking about tons and tons of money.
Mm.
And then I really look back when I first started doing it, it had been 14 years. That's how much of a denial that I was in. Now, listen, I'm probably during that time, I kind of felt like I was somewhat of a Robin Hood, because yes, I gambled a lot, but I also helped my family, my kids, and my ex-wife who was on disability and all this stuff. And I was very generous with people that were in my life and that sort of thing. So maybe that helped, reduce some of the guilt in terms of
Mm.
what I was doing.
Rationalization, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But the primary thing was to just keep the gambling because I had no way of dealing with the frustrations and the challenges and the fears and the pain of life. And that was the way that I could at least turn it off
Mm.
temporarily. And as we all know, it's a temporary turn off and
Right.
it comes back with interest once,
Every time.
the bet's made.
And were you always isolating in this gambling now in these years of in and out and back and forth with it was just you didn't have any friends outside obviously GA you were when you were going back to meetings you were telling on yourself it sounds
Yeah,
like
but that
right.
was in the early years. In later years,
Okay.
I wouldn't go back for 2, 3, 4, 5 years or something like
Okay, so you had
that.
big gaps of time of even going
Yeah,
back into GA. Okay, so you're out there gambling more, but you're doing it in isolation from others
always
in
in
your life.
isolation, always
Got it.
ashamed of the fact that I was a gambler. And actually, growing up, my two biggest fears that when I went either to the racetrack or to a casino, that I'd run into one of my parents.
Mm,
And maybe the fear was more about them looking at me and feeling guilty about what they had created, or maybe felt that I don't know. But that was the few times that happened. It was I couldn't get out fast enough. And of course, if I was winning and I could look over at a different table and see my mom, bad luck immediately, and I'd be barking at her.
oh my goodness. And now in these years, is it the same gambling activity? Is it the craps and some table games, or
Yes.
had you moved into any other kinds
No,
of?
I stayed pretty much with craps, and I can probably say I've been to anywhere from 300 to 400 casinos across the country. That when I needed to do more of my illegal activity, I needed to travel a lot to different states and all
Got
that.
it.
And so, in doing so, as soon as I made the money, I'd find the nearest casino. And I've been on Indian reservation. I've been everywhere. I remember one time, Florida isn't that big on gambling, but they have these boats that you can get out on.
Mm, mhm.
One
River
that goes in
boats?
what?
The
Well,
river
not
boats? Or
no.
that's
These are
different.
actually this was in the Gulf of Mexico, and they
Oh,
had
okay.
to be able to go out into international waters.
Got it.
And one of the worst painful feelings that I had was that we'd gone out, and we're going back, so 15, 20 years ago, of course, because I haven't gambled more than 15 years. And I was out there, and I had run out of money, but they had an ATM machine. But the ATM machine on board was based on connected via cell phone. It didn't have the technology they have today, and that would come in and out. And so one of the worst feelings in the world was to actually have money that I could take out, but not be able to because the cell signal wasn't working.
oh my
And
goodness.
then, sure enough, as soon as I lost the money, the boat still had to stay out. There were times that I just wanted to jump off the boat and swim back to shore. Right, I'd be dead in about a minute. And there was
right.
another time when the tide was too low and the boat couldn't come in. And as soon as I was done gambling, I mean, in all of casino gambling I did, of course, they took care of me and give me comps. The minute I was done, I wasn't the guy that would hang around and watch other people play. I wanted to be as far away as possible from that casino
Yeah.
because I was never going to ever gamble again.
Right.
And that pain of sitting and having to be in my thoughts, waiting for the ship to be at the water to rise enough so it can go back and I can get off. Some waiting 2, 3, 4 extra hours
Yeah.
was me being forced to deal with the pain. Once
Yeah.
I got off the ship, then I'd have a new plan. Okay, I could start doing my criminal stuff and make money again, and then
Yeah.
everything would be okay. But that was so hard.
Yeah. Okay, I have an interesting question because I'm a little fascinated by your game of choice in that because we hear all the time about you have the action big shot gambler and then you have the isolation gambler, right? And what I picture with the craps tables, because I I've been around them enough, not really ever. I think I maybe played once, but it was always the game that seemed to have the most people and fun and the screaming and the action. But you're talking about really wanting to be as far away from people as possible. And so I just find it interesting that you found solace at that kind of game versus, let's say, a slot machine or just something where it was much more frank in Frank's mind. Did Have you ever figured out why that was for you? Maybe it
Well,
doesn't matter, maybe, but I'm
no,
just really curious because I think it's fascinating.
the crowd only made a difference to me in that one, if there was a hot roller, then that was fine to be there. I would just suffer through the patience of having to wait to keep making more and more money. But when I was rolling and they would be slowing down the game, and it would just drive me crazy because I'm the type that if the way I played, that if I had a 5 minute roll, that I could take $500 and turn it into 50,000 because I would throw those dice so quick and just keep pressing and pressing the bets. But the slowness of everyone putting their bets down or their hands getting in the way. I mean, I was so superstitious.
Mm,
And there's no greater feeling too when you just call everything right. So in craps, you're allowed to turn off your bets, except certain ones and all that. So there was many, many times when I was able to, and that's what kept me back in. It keeps a lot of us in those exciting wins or that feeling of omnipotence where I would be rolling the dice and I'd keep rolling and rolling, and all of a sudden something would come up, somebody would say something, could get in the way or whatever, and I'd say all bets off, and the table would like, that's crazy or something. And I'd roll the dice and it was 7 out, the losing number once the point's been established. I would do this like 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a row. And the whole table was just, okay, our bets are off too. And they're
mesmerized.
winning. And all
Wow.
and it was just like the craziest and most exciting feeling in the world. So from that standpoint, it's kind of fun because I'm getting that validation.
Yeah.
But if having a lot of those hot rolls without the players there could have made 10 times as much money at a different table. And that's what I looked for. I looked for the empty tables because I could just throw as fast as I possibly could. And the dealers were all over the place, stacking and paying the bets off.
Mm, interesting. Really interesting. Okay. All right. So let's now fast forward as now we're getting closer to the last 15 years of recovery stuff, which I can't wait to spend a lot of time on. But let's kind of walk it out. How do you now creep up into the 2000s and getting now near the 2010, 2011 time?
Well, again, the gambling continued, the criminal activities continued. I still tried to work on a business, and again, once because I just knew that the gambling wasn't sustainable, but there was also a sense of guilt in making all this money from because there were times that I would just say, okay, I'm stopping gambling for 3 months. I'll just continue with the criminal activity, use that money to start a business. Business will flourish. I won't have to gamble, all that sort of stuff. But that never ever worked. So eventually, I think there was a part of me that just got very sloppy with a lot of the things that I was doing. I got caught one time and I was put on probation, and then another time because I was on probation, I got caught again, and that's when the big day in my life, and you and I always talk about these numbers, was
Hmm.
1/11/11, which
Right.
we got a lot of different numbers in play here, and that's when I got arrested, and my life came crashing down. I never ever had to truly pay serious consequences, but I had 2 kids in college. I had an ex-wife that was depending upon me to help her and the kids. And it was the most painful day of my entire life going through that, being arrested, knowing that there's no way out. I felt I was going to be put away forever. There's
What
a
happened?
lot of,
So, what was the chain of events that occurred on that day, if you don't mind sharing?
oh, how I got arrested?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had just kind of, it's funny because about a month before, okay, we're talking in early January, a month before, I'd been in Caesar's Palace in Atlantic City, and I won a bunch of money, and I'm ready to go home, and it was just perfect. I'm just going to go home. I had a flight to go home for Christmas, and then I was leaving, and I still had a few hours before the flight was to come, and I go down these escalators, and Caesar's Palace in Atlantic City, always busy. and I saw empty tables. And I said, are you kidding me? An empty table? What I could do in 10 minutes if I get hot would, just be amazing. Well, we know how that story worked, and I lost it all. Fortunately, I had gone to the post office a couple of days sooner and bought a bunch of money orders and mailed them home, so I'd have something to live on. But that money I was gonna stop. I was gonna focus on my business. I just got a brand new apartment, fully furnished, near my daughter and my ex-wife, and I was set until I went down that escalator and blew all that money. So I came back, had to do a little more criminal activity, and I also had to see a probation officer. So, and there was a change in the probation officer. So I had to drive up to Northern California, which was where my original arrest was while I was still on probation. And it was just pure sloppiness. The weekend before, I'd been back and I lost some money in Laughlin. This is the last place I ever made a bet, because I had the only place that gave me a credit line on top of that. And so I blew that, and I know I had to do a little more criminal activity to start paying some bills again. And I just come back from the probation officer, and I just left this letter right sitting on my front seat. And the store that I went to get this merchandise from that I would then resell on the internet happened to be right around the corner from the police station. And it just, a weird set of circumstances came where they saw my car, and they something looked a little weird, and I was just getting into the car with some bags of merchandise, and they looked over and they saw this letter. And so that gave them permission to do a full search because I was on probation. They're allowed to do it. Oh, and they found all that stuff, and then I got arrested. I was very, very sloppy. And it's like, if there was an episode, I didn't want to go into a lot of details of it, but of like the world's stupidest, criminals, I would have been number one at that point. But, I think that's higher power. Like, Frank, enough is enough. We got to be done with this. We got to.
Right. Now, did you do even a day or two in jail when they arrested you?
Yeah, I did. Okay. And that night in jail was one of, and I thought I'd never get out because the police were so upset with this. They were just like livid. I don't know. I was a nice person. I don't know what they had against me, but they were, and they called the probation officer. They told him to put me on a no bail hold. But somehow I got a friend who worked for a law firm, a good close friend from program, and somehow I remembered his number, not the main number, but the second number that's after hours. He happened to answer. He was able to talk the probation officer out of reversing that. We were able to get a hold of my sister that put up some money so that I could get out on bail. But that night in jail, I mean, I'm by myself, but it was big turning point for me because I was going to be writing everything out and apologizing to my kids and explaining everything, what a fraud I was. And they thought I was just this successful businessman that traveled all over the country. They had no clue that I did what I did. And there was a break for dinner or something. And they gave you these little pencils, like golf pencils with no erasers. And mine was down to a nub. And I'm standing right next to where the guards are. And there's a pencil sharpener there. And I said, you mind if I sharpen my pencil? And the guy looked at me and he said, no, you can do it on your next break, which was 12 hours later. And so at that moment, I was so pissed. Who was I pissed at? Him? No. Doing his job, his ego, that's his business. I put myself in this position, and I was so committed to never, ever put myself in a position like this where somebody could take my freedom away. Something so simple as sharpening a pencil. And that was a turning point in my life.
And that was January 11th, 2011.
Right.
Yeah.
I got out the next day. 11 days later, I went to my first meeting at Dana Point. My older sister happened to be at that meeting, and a few other friends. And then 5 days after that, I turned myself into Betttr the rehab in Los Angeles, and they let me stay there for 15 months until I got my court case resolved. I knew I was going to go to jail, and I was prepared. My entire life, I've been a prisoner of this disease. By the time I went to jail, I had total freedom. And that 9 months was just an absolutely amazing time. And I've got lots of great stories about that as well.
and that's the date that Frank and I always talk about having in common. Just one of many spiritual things I think we've connected on, because he talks about January 11th of 11 being what was the worst moments of his life, but also turned into what would become the best day of his life, because over 15 years later from that date. And January 11th for me is so significant because in 1996, on January 11th, was the day that I had had enough of hiding from the world who I was as a human being. And that was the first day I uttered the words to another human being that I'm gay. And it was, a turning point in my life. We're going to take a break there. And then when we come back on the other side, we're getting into all the great stuff of 15 plus years of absolutely incredible recovery that Frank has had. And we look forward to sharing all that with you. We'll be back in the Gambling Recovery Lounge. Welcome back into the Gambling Recovery Lounge. All right, so let's continue on where we left off. So, Frank, you were now doing a 9-month stint in prison. Is that the story? And if so, a little bit about what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. So after serving or spending 15 months in rehab, and it's interesting because I was admitted into jail on April 13th. I can't remember the exact year, but I actually got out 9 months later, which happened to be on the 11th of January the following year.
No
Again,
way.
yeah,
I
the
don't
way
think
they
I heard that
calculated
part.
the days, it was just like I thought it'd be the 13th, 9 months, 9 months, but it was like some sort of word calculation that got me out on the 11th.
Of
And
course
so,
it did. Of course it
um,
did.
and it was in the beginning, it was a tough experience. I was in, the county jails. It was in Northern California, Redwood City, where I'd gotten arrested. And I'd never experienced anything like that. Just a lot of scary situations. And there were triple bunk beds. So if you were in the middle, I think I was in the middle a couple of times, you can barely raise your head more than a few inches. And they had, I don't know, I don't remember the numbers exactly. I shut out probably a lot of it, but let's say in this specific cell area, there might have been 75 people and one toilet, which was almost virtually open, so if you had to, do your stuff,
Wow.
the whole place is very well aware of it all the time. And this is going on 24/7. So crazy. And but I was
That has to
fortunate.
be a humbling experience.
Oh, absolutely. And we got out maybe just for meals 3 times a day and a little exercise. And I have a lot of trouble memorizing things, but I used that experience to memorize a third step prayer.
Mm.
And I would never been much of a big walking fan, but there's in the little dining area there was a kind of a rectangular area. I think I had to go like 25 laps just to make 1 mile. And I would do as many as I possibly could and just reciting the third step prayer over and over and over again. And then I applied to go to the camp, which was a nice situation. I mean, I wasn't like somebody that was involved in the real serious crimes, and I was admitted there, and after maybe 1 or 2 months, I don't remember the exact timing, and it was like a camp. We the door you could leave if you want to. Of course, if you do, then you're going to spend many more years, but you're allowed to go to school. And there was and I got a bicycle from actually I still have that bike today, as a matter of fact, from one of the residents that was inmates, if you will, was leaving, and I offered to pay for it, and he was a real nice guy, and he says, no, his dad said you can just have it. And I used that bike, and I'd ride 5 miles every day to this culinary arts program, and we had the best meals in the world. I mean, Monday through Friday was, and learned a lot about. Actually, there's a concept in cooking that I want to share. It's called clean as you go,
Mm.
and that's one of the things that the chef, a very experienced chef, taught us about. And that's so useful in program because it reminds me of the fourth step and the 10th step. And once you get your fourth step out of the way, the idea of clean as you go is that, when you're cooking stuff, there's always time in between to wash a pot, to soak it, to scrub the counter, to put the things away. And a lot of times chefs or cooks will just like wait till the end and then it becomes overwhelming. And I think I like that analogy in terms of our program is that I try to use that 10 step and clean up as much as I can immediately so it's not a bigger problem. And I do a 10 step every night and I kind of review. And most of the time, I had a good day, and whatever I thought I messed up, I took care of. But if not, there's a commitment. Okay, the first possible opportunity, I'll clean up this other thing, and it just made my life so much easier, so that I don't have to do any big four steps all over again. I can just continue to do the regular routine cleanup instead of the big spring cleaning, if you will. And so after going through that program, I was there for a bunch of months. And then there was one little crazy incident. You know what? I'm a little embarrassed to talk about it, so I think I should. I tend to be someone that has difficulty when things are like overpriced. And so they would sell these little packets of tuna. I guess I could be called the tuna smuggler, for like $4. But when we would go out and we could stop at a market or 7-Eleven or a convenience store or something to pick up things, and I had the same exact packets were like available for like $1.
Mhm.
And so I just like took a few of them or something. And when you came in, they searched you and all that, but they gave you a locker to put stuff for the outside. And I had a couple of those packets in there. And somehow, in some crazy way, they did a search of these lockers and they came up with these packets. And I was, maybe somewhat wrongfully accused of trying to smuggle them in. They're just tuna packets, they're nothing. But the guy was just trying to exert his position and make me an example. But I got sent back. And that was the last month or so. And I'm glad I did because it just, sometimes these little tiny things will slip you up, and I knew it was wrong, you know, and although it was a technicality and it was really silly, it was wrong. And so that has helped inform me today in terms of being real careful about even any kind of, minor violation of any kind.
Now, was there any kind of meetings that you were doing while you were in that
Yeah.
situation?
Again, and thank you for asking about that because that's helped informed who I am today. There were no GA meetings at all. In the main jail, there were AA meetings from time to time, and many of the residents, I call them residents, inmates, if you will, would attend, and because it's just a way to get out of the cell, and so most of them weren't really serious about it. But then when I got into the camp, there was a weekly AA meeting. And, AA has a really good program, people that are involved in, institutions and they do this volunteer work. And they have to go through this very thorough vetting process to be able to do it. And there were two guys that came there every week. And in our camp, we had maybe, let's say, 120 people. And a lot of them were there for alcohol and drugs and all that sort of thing. So it would have been somewhat useful for them to attend. And out of the entire time that I was there, I think it was just me, or maybe I was able to convince one or two other people to show up every once in a while for the meeting. But these guys still showed up every week. And even though I wasn't an AA, it was a 12-step program. And their dedication and their commitment to give back was so touching. The hours that it took them to come and drive and go through the process of being searched and this whole thing, it just reminded me of the beauty of people and program and in this world. And that has enhanced my commitment to do whatever I can in that same way.
Great. Okay, so now you get out.
I get out
And then what happens?
and just on the drive back home, I get a call from the same friend of mine that was in program, and he worked for an attorney that kind of had an accident, and he was in a rehab recovering. And his ex-wife had contacted my friend Jim and said, "Do you know anybody that could just kind of stay with him and cheer him up and make sure the nurses are doing their job?" And I just happened to get out of jail that day, and he called me on the ride down. He says, "Frank, I have something for you." And sure enough, I ended up going to the rehab every day. He got better. We had a great time. He moved me into his beautiful luxury apartment in Marina Del Rey. I had my own room. I got paid a really princely sum of money, and I just began turning my life around. I started paying off my debts. I got still remained very, very active in GA. And the one thing I learned about when rehab is that when you leave rehab, I remember this counselor saying, the only thing that needs to change is your address. And even in jail, I was able to write out letters, mail them to my sister. She would scan them and email them to some people that I was might have still been on a gratitude list or people that I connected regularly. So not a lot had changed. My program was still very consistent.
Mhm.
And so thank God for that, because it might have been very hard to overcome a kind of a gap. And so, and after about 2 or 3 years, my friend and found a partner, and she moved in, and I lived with them for about a year and a half in that. But then it made sense for me to get my own place, which I did.
And what year was that around?
So we're going back around 2016, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So now you're about 5 years since this all went down in 11.
Right.
Got it. And now are you at this point fully immersed in GA again, and now are you doing different things than you didn't do the first time around when you
Well, I
had
continued to do the things that I was doing. So I had a sponsor during that 15-month period while I was in rehab, and that just continued throughout my jail term and afterwards. And
okay.
so I was clearly immersed in the SEPs, clearly involved in service, sponsoring a lot of people, going to a lot of meetings. That was just, they say keep going to meetings until you want to go to meetings, and I wanted to go all the time. And my life just continued to get better and better. And about that time is when I met my partner, Eva, which was around the same time that my sister, Sandy, passed away.
Mm.
And Sandy was one of the most loved members of GA. I took her to her first meeting many years before that. It took her years and years. She worked in the card clubs. She'd go to meetings wearing her outfit. She was a chip girl, and she just struggled to make any time. But when she passed away, I think she had something like 28 years and
Wow.
helped so many people in program. And I remember this one time that I sent her away to a rehab back east, and I was making a little money so I could afford to do it. And she was supposed to get on a flight like 7 in the morning, and she was nowhere to be found. I had to pull her out of the casino like at 4 a.m. She had to get those last gambles in, and she went to this rehab, and she came out so happy and so excited. And 2 weeks later, she was back gambling again.
Mm.
You're not ready till you're ready. But it took her some years to get ready, and became the light of so many people in the program, especially in Northern California, where she worked with so many women, helped so many people.
Yeah, and this is the other incredible link that Frank and I ended up sharing, which I didn't even know is I've had two sponsors in my time in GA, and my current sponsor, who I've now been with for over 3 years, Frank's sister Sandy, who he has just been talking about, is my sponsor's wife at the time of her passing, and I didn't know any of this at the time I even got my sponsor, and this is all part of the miracle story of the connectivity. It's just incredible, and yeah, all the stories I've heard about Sandy from you and so many others, and Ed, and you know, I wish I had been around to meet her, but it's one of those things like I didn't need to be physically here to have known her. Like I know her through all of you, which is just such a blessing.
She was so
Um,
supportive of someone that relapsed and all my challenges, She would just always say, Frank, I'm never mad at you. I'm just mad at the disease, you know? And she was patient and she waited and waited and waited till I was able to finally surrender, truly surrender. And
mm,
that
mm,
brought her so much joy.
mm. I want to ask you, I don't know if you'll be able to share this, but I was listening back to something you had spoken about, I think 5 years ago. It was a story where you were talking about you were driving for Uber and you had picked somebody up from a bar late at night, and you were having a discussion with this person about has she ever tried AA? She'd been talking, I guess, about too much alcohol, and you had ended up giving her. You told her openly about GA and your story. You ended up giving her your number, and the next day she texted you, "Thank you for getting me home safely." But then there was like 6 months that went by, and you never heard anything. And then one day you did. Do you remember this story? And if can you talk a
Absolutely. I
little
still
bit
have
about it? Because
her number on my phone
I
because,
I cried when I listened to you talk about this. So I'd love for you to share.
yeah. Well, you've covered most of it, but I think some of the key elements of it was the fact that, there's opportunities to give back all the time in life if you have that mindset and you're open to it. And it was just the most amazing gift to me that I could just see the shame and the disgust that, looking in the rearview mirror that she was going through. And it just brought me so much pain and so much memories of what I had gone through. And she opened up to me and we talked about, we've been to meetings. I said, I go to meetings. I have friends that go to AA meetings, and she says, I've tried them and they didn't work. The guys would hit on me, or just all this crazy stuff. And
Mm,
I said, one of the things that I learned over the years is that, yeah, sometimes a meeting might be like that, but there's hundreds and hundreds of meetings, within a few miles of you in AA in the Los Angeles area. And just, you may want to just give it another shot.
mhm.
And yeah, and I never thought much of it other than the fact she texted me back in the morning to say thank you. And then out of the blue, she just, like you said, 6 months later, I get a text and she says, This is Melanie. You may not remember me, but I was in your car 6 months ago. And I just want to tell you that I really appreciate what you did. And I just got my 6 months keychain today.
Mm,
And that just an amazing moment. And what's happened since, not even relevant. If we're free from our disease any period of time in our lives, it's a reprieve and a blessing, and things could only get better when that takes place. So,
yeah,
um,
thank you for sharing. And I've as you know, as I made a big career change a couple of years ago, and I'm carving my way through a bunch of stuff. But one of those things is I also drive Uber to earn income, and I've had multiple experiences with passengers where somehow the topic comes up about gambling, and I have been on more than one occasion very open about myself because I just figure, you know, the best thing that I can do with the worst thing that ever happened to me is name it, claim it, and dump it, and own it, and do something great with it. And if you can get rid of the shame and the guilt associated with it, you have the best chance possible to be of help to somebody else. Because if you continue to be shackled by guilt and shame, you're just crippling yourself from being able to move freely. And then you're of no use to yourself or anybody else. And so, you just have to hope anytime you're talking authentically with anybody on any level that maybe it's going to just help somebody in their life. Maybe not in that moment, but maybe 6 months, later, like you experienced. you get a miracle like that. And I think if we all moved about the world with that kind of mindset, we'd all be in a much better place. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so I want to fast forward now to the pandemic, because now so 2020, you've got 9 years, and now the pandemic hits. So what happens from a Gamblers Anonymous perspective and meetings? Because now something was miraculously about to occur. But what kind of was going on leading up to what we'll talk about with what you had a huge part in creating?
Well, thank you. Yeah, that is a major positive turning point in my life in recovery when COVID took place, as it has been for many people. And yes, the tragic nature of all the lives that have been lost. But just like everything else, and there's renewal and beautiful things can come out of any tragedy. And so what happened on March 20th, 2020, a couple of days prior to that, and this is a very interesting story, there was one of our members locally, in and out all the time, attended one of these Zoom meetings. We thought we'd just throw a couple together, and we heard about it. So that was fun. And this guy in the meeting says, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if we just did this every day?" And well, nobody was volunteering to do it, but I thought, gosh, I've got nothing to do. And listen, COVID's going to be around for just a few months anyway. What's the big deal? Well, just do a meeting every day. And then I started the LA Daily International meeting, which has been going on ever since March. We haven't missed a single day. And it's 1 p.m. LA time, which is a perfect time worldwide because it's in the evening in the UK and Europe. In Australia, it's the next day in the morning. On the East Coast, it's late afternoon. So, and we got such an amazing international group of people. But again, we just thought, in the beginning, I was hosting that 7 days a week, plus another couple evening meetings as well. I mean, we had nothing better to do. We're just sitting at home anyway. And then we started to connect with some people in the UK, and they were putting spreadsheets together of meetings. And then we had one guy, a really nice guy, who worked for one of the big news stations, and he was just so caught up in like researching everywhere, all these meetings. So he'll kind of put all the meetings together on this one spreadsheet. We had help from a bunch of other people. And so we would send that out, that people would have it. But in the interim, came along a guy named Paul Kay from Ireland, and he had just been involved in this virtually crippling accident. It was in a metal leg brace and bedridden for months and months and months. But he had heard about this upcoming convention in the UK, which wasn't going to happen because of COVID. And his idea was, hey, let's start a convention online. Let's do it on Zoom. Mm-hmm. And so he heard that I was involved a lot with meetings and people in the UK. So he got a hold of me and a bunch of other people. And before you know it, again, here we go to dates. On June 27th, which happened to be my partner's birthday, 2020, we had it was really only about 14 hours of meetings, but with all the different time zones, each
only 14 hours of meetings.
Yeah, it was a 24-hour event for me because we had all these, and there are well over 100 workshops.
Wow.
That were done during that period, and it was absolutely amazing how it all came together. And as part of that process, I got connected. We formed a committee called GFFR, Gamblers and Family and Friends in Recovery. And the website is gamblersinrecovery.com. And this committee was the most amazing committee. Many of the people have been trustees or active in their own regions internationally. Mm-hmm. And every one of them had said they'd never, ever been involved in anything where there was so much agreement, that it was so easy. And if somebody didn't agree, that was okay. They went along with the group. They couldn't even believe that it was just like this divinely inspired meeting of some really amazing people. And as a result, we decided to put together the website. And again, we thought it would be something that would just last, a few months. We didn't, once COVID ran its course, we didn't realize the importance of the online meetings and how many different communities it can serve. The idea of a young family, with a husband or wife needing to get to meetings, but somebody's got to work and somebody's got to watch the kids. But imagine putting the kids to sleep at 8 o'clock and being able to get to a meeting,
Right.
and not lose out on that. So yeah, I love live meetings, and I do a lot more now today than I used to, and I'm actually a big fan of the Zoom meetings as well. But there, in the combo book, and I know you're a historian related to that, it used to say something along the lines of, attend at least one meeting a week or something. A lot of people took that as attend only one meeting a week.
Right.
And so if you had a problem, you've gone to your meeting on Tuesday night and now it's Wednesday morning, well, you've got a whole week to do that. Well, you can wait 3 hours on your lunch break and listen to a meeting on Zoom and get the recovery you want, or step outside and share if you have to. So it made things so much more easy for everyone to access meetings. Then you have people that are in remote areas where some of the meetings are 200-300 miles away. You have people like in the LGBTQTA plus.
All the letters. I
Yeah,
know. I know.
I'm really bad at
Even
remembering
being
all
part of the
that.
community, I know.
Yes, and
It's a
be
lot of
able to
letters.
have like-minded people. We
Yeah.
have this great meeting where people that have sometimes terminally ill disease and are in recovery, they get together every Tuesday to
Incredible.
discuss how that relates to, and to have something like that in Los Angeles, people probably have to drive hundreds of miles and inconvenience to get together. And now that can be done instantaneously.
Yeah.
I like the access of it. Like a lot of times I need to get my bike ride in, and there's a choice, do I go to the Zoom meeting or not? I can do them both at the same time and do it quite frequently.
Right.
So it just makes so much sense for so many people. But what touches me the most is there's probably not a 3-month period that goes by where I'll hear about somebody celebrating a year in the program. And we refer back to that Uber incident with the person
Yeah.
being able to help, but where they'll say, listen, I found Gammas in Recovery online. I was looking for the suicide hotline. I was ready to give up, and I found this, and I started to go to meetings, and I just made a year, and my life is completely turned around. I mean, and I don't go to that many Zoom meetings to hear that as much, but I know that's going on everywhere. And another instance, which was really that really hit me early on in recovery and the Zoom meetings too. We'd have this woman that would show up just about every day, never on camera, probably didn't even use her real name, listened mostly in the beginning, and then started to share openly. And she said that she absolutely loved coming to these Zoom meetings because there's no way on earth would she be caught dead at a live meeting in LA. Too many people knew her.
Mm.
People, it would be just too bare. Now, after being comfortable after a while, it still may be the case for her, but she got her recovery online and was safe.
Yeah.
I've been introduced to a few, let's say, celebrities slash sports personalities that have some severe gambling problems. This is an entree to get them into meetings without having being on camera, without having to use their real name, but be able to have access to recovery. They couldn't just show up at a live meeting. So there's just so many amazing benefits of these Zoom meetings. And where we thought this would last just a few months, we're still getting daily attendance of anywhere from 25 to 40 people a day on our LA daily Zoom meetings in the beginning.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you guys started a unique feature as part of that meeting as far as speakers and recording them. And because it's not, I guess, just covering a logistical thing real quick for some people out there that may be like, what do you mean you record speakers? These are not GA sanctioned meetings specifically, so you can kind of have the ability to kind of do what you want with them, right? So can you talk a little bit about that concept? And then I want to talk about my own experience as part of that.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's really important part. Up until the COVID times, I don't know that there were probably 5 or 10 recordings that existed anywhere. Maybe from a convention or something that might have happened. A couple friends from the UK thought it would be a great idea to start recording some of these shares. And we would do it through Zoom, of course, and but we would only record the audio portion. They would only use their first name and initial, nobody else, and it would be generally followed up with a Q&A, which was just as important as the share. And we also allowed people that were concerned about their voice being recorded and maybe being identified to be able to just write in through the chat a question they might have that the host would ask on their behalf. Well, since we started this, I think we have well over 500 recordings, and they're absolutely amazing. This is an archive that will be around in perpetuity, and that would have never happened without COVID, and that makes a difference. And I'll just tell you my own silly experience with that. Once in a while, somebody will come into a meeting and they say, "I know this guy. Wait a second, aren't you the guy that did that recording on procrastination?" And then, of course, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess I did do a share on procrastination." She says, "Well, I got so much out of it." So what did I do? I went back and listened to it.
Yeah.
And I got so much out of it.
Yeah.
So here I am, having given that recording, and still was able to learn from myself and be reminded of the fact that, you need to practice what you preach to sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about that. There's just an amazing resource available.
So the first day Frank and I actually spoke was March 5th of 2022. And we were only speaking because there was a GA member who was coming into town from out of state on a visit. And somebody told me, yeah, Frank's figured out how to get her from the airport. She had left her phone at home or something like that. So it was a little bit chaotic.
Oh, yeah.
And so later that day, once I heard everything was resolved and everything was fine, and I had already been tipped off to the Gamblers in Recovery website. And so I had listened by that point to some of the speaker recordings. So I ended up just texting Frank and I said, "Hey, thanks for getting this person, back from the airport safely. And by the way, I've tuned into your website. We haven't met, we haven't spoken. My name's Eric. I was coming up on 9 months in the following week. And I said, it's an amazing website. Thank you for providing it. And it's these speaker recordings you do are just amazing. And maybe one day I could be on there doing one." And Frank immediately said, "Well, great. I have an opening next Saturday. It's yours." And I was like, "Oh, shit." And so I took contrary action and I said yes. And it was like a couple days, I think, before my 9 months in the program that I got to be on that and do that share, which went for like 20 minutes. And then there was all the Q&A after. And that changed my whole life, Frank. That experience just catapulted my recovery. It was such a spiritual experience. And it was the first time, because we get to do 3 minutes at most of these meetings, right? And there's just only so much you can get out, even if you're going 7 days a week. So to be able to get out my story for the first time in a public setting, even though it was Zoom, there were probably 40 plus people there. It was just incredible. And I've now been able to do that. I think I've got 3 recordings out there, I think, at this point now. And I still go back and listen to them annually, at least. And to hear my own perspectives on different things from what I shared still gives me great recovery and also great opportunity to learn from myself, because now I hear some of those things and I'm like, that's not even what you believe today, like that. And it just shows how we evolve when we're really being honest about where we're at with our recovery. So, thank you for what you do with that website. Again, it's gamblersinrecovery.com for anyone who isn't aware of it. I'll also post it in the show notes, because you're running a list as the meetings are happening worldwide on Zoom, right? You're running a live list of every meeting that's live going on now, as well as all the upcoming meetings in the hours and days to come. And there's got to be over 100 of those meetings that are kind of on the reel, I would assume. I don't know if there's an actual.
Yeah, maybe 300 to 400. I don't know the exact count.
Yeah. Hundreds. It's just incredible. So no matter where you are in the world, whether you're affiliated with Gamblers Anonymous or you're doing another kind of recovery program, whether it's Recovery Road Online, there's a number of different avenues that are filtering in these Zoom meetings. it is an incredible resource that you can use literally 24 hours a day. You can pretty much find a meeting. And thank you for the miracle that you helped build, because it literally is helping tens of thousands of people along the way. But you wanted to talk about the convention.
Yeah. So I was never too much of a convention person over the years, but after having met so many people online, there was a Scottish convention. And at that convention, there were at least 50 people that I knew from Zoom, most of them from Scotland, but other from Ireland and the UK, that I got to meet and give hugs
Mm.
to almost every single one of them. When I walked up to them, I'd say, "Oh, you? I just saw you yesterday." And I'd never met them in my entire life. I felt that I really, really knew them, the depths of their souls and their experience, and
Wow.
that they knew me. It was the most amazing feeling in the world. Yes, okay, some were a little wider or narrower or taller or shorter than you might have thought. And so all those that, might suggest that Zoom is a little impersonal, that connection was real
Yeah.
and powerful and meaningful. And I look forward. I'll be going with my good friend Dan Sponsey. We're going to the Scottish convention coming up, and that's going to be exciting in October of this year. So,
Oh, very nice. And you were at a one not too long ago as well, right? Or are you
yeah,
okay?
in Ireland, they had the Galway
The
convention,
Ireland. Okay.
and that was amazing. It was a healing convention for me and for Dan. It was shortly after my partner Eva, who passed away on October 7th. So it was about 3 weeks later. Out of nowhere, I decided I need to get to a convention.
Mm,
I need to be with my people.
yeah.
And it was so amazing. So many good friends that I was able to spend time with. And it was just so healing for both me and Dan to be able to have that opportunity to do that. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for the program in helping me get through this.
Yeah.
You hear about people losing children, losing partners, losing jobs, careers, all sorts of things. And it's easy to sometimes get upset with your higher power and, what a beautiful soul, what a wonderful person. Look at me, I'm doing okay in the world today. I'm a decent person. Why me? It's easy to get upset. It just strengthened my faith in my higher power. It got me through this. And I don't need to understand why. I just need to trust that maybe one day down the road I'll understand. Her passing was an instant turnaround from almost a year and a half with the hope that she's going to be okay and being in remission and
Yeah.
cancer free. In the end, she was cancer free,
Yeah.
but just kind of right at the end, a sucker punch. 8 hours later, she's gone. But thanks to this program and all the people in it, my higher power connection, and my work in the program to prepare me for this, I look back at that experience and I cry a lot about it, but I'm attached to the joy of it all. And I tend to be a caretaker. Like I don't never was taken care of much in my own life. So it's naturally easy for me to just kind of take care of everyone else. This program taught me to just be cared for. And my kids came down. My son had just come back from Thailand for a little while, and they took care of me for a week.
Mm.
Never in my life. And I said yes to everything. I could have done it all myself, but I said yes. And I said yes to friends that said, let's go here, let's do that. I would have said no, 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 no. So program taught me that,
Yeah.
open-mindedness.
Yeah. I mean, having watched you go through that for over a year, and it was really inspiring. Not just the caretaking you were doing on a daily, hourly basis for Eva, it was that you were still mindful of all of your friends and loved ones who wanted to, of course, know what was going on, and we couldn't be there with you all the time, but you constantly, and being part of text threads, giving us regular updates on what was happening. And a lot of people, I think, would just kind of shut down and go handle what they got to handle. And it just shows your wide range of care for everybody, and that you're fully cognizant that our love for each other is such a big part of going through the tough times, just as much as gone through the good times, and it was just an incredible thing to be a part of. And, you talking so openly and eloquently about it and what you took from it without anger and resentment and used it for positive reinforcement is just incredible.
Thank you,
Um,
Eric. That's very kind. And the lesson I learned from that is we really don't know what we're capable of. And by just continuing to surrender, to be in acceptance, to trust the program, and to have faith, all things are possible. If you would have told me in the beginning what I would be doing at the end, the last month, I would have said absolutely no way. And I got to the point where it became the most intimate experience I've ever had in my entire life. I got to have the feeling that a mother has when they have a newborn, and that their entire life is dependent upon that mother's love and care. And to be in a position that this program gave me the gift of to be that trusted person that would rise to the occasion and not run to the casino to escape from it. It's the greatest gift I've ever received in this program.
it's just incredible. I want to ask you just a few like general recovery topics, I'll say, that I want to get your take on. Obviously, gambling more than ever before is in the world. We see all the advertising, the legalization of sports gambling across most of our nation, over the last, nearly decade since the Supreme Court, overturned the federal ban and returned it to the states. And we see a lot of celebrities, superstars that both sporting world and the actor world that are spokespeople for advocating for gambling. And you don't really have a voice on the other side. In your opinion, with your experience, and you talked about having come across a few people, celebrity status, that maybe are participating in Zoom meetings to protect their anonymity. And I think, you have a lot of well-known people in the world who are very open about their sobriety and their recovery and AA and all that, but you don't really have any of those stories in the public eye. Do you have a take on what do you think it's going to take for that kind of voice out there to come forward? I'm just curious your opinion.
Issues like that, they concern me. And I'm not the one that is political. It doesn't mean I'm apathetic or passive in that area. I just know there are a lot of amazing people, including you, Eric, and people that you and I are very close to in the LA area that are committed to get the word out and to do the necessary changes that need to take place. And we know it's going to be a time-consuming process. We know there'll be lots of casualties along the way. That's not a battle that I've ever been comfortable in being engaged with. But what I do take, and I'm generally not an angry person, but I do take whatever anger that comes from that, and I just do what I can to direct it to where I can just turn around and help somebody. And whether that's in program or somebody just walking down the street. Eric and I are very big fans of Michael Singer, and one of his philosophies talks about, which I've stolen from him, so I don't get any credit for this, is that one of my goals in life is for every person that I've come in contact with, their life is just a little bit better for having met me.
Mm,
And most days I can do that. Once in a while I fall short. So yeah, I know that I'm not one that can make that sort of commitment to
yeah.
do that, but I'm grateful that there are those that can. And while they're doing that, maybe I can help them on the more micro level while they're working on the macro stuff. And you're amazing, Eric, because you do both. So you're my hero in that regard.
Too kind. One thing, one task at a time. So I'm curious what your take is on this feeling about Gamblers Anonymous today in terms of compared to maybe what you saw 10 years ago, 15 years ago, in those days, in terms of people that are coming in, the membership, what are you hearing, seeing differently? Do you see more interest because I think there's still a stigma out there about, a lot of people don't want to get involved with GA. It's too culty. It's too, even though we talk about it not being a religious program, there is still a language about God and higher power, and that just turns a lot of people off who are non-secular. But what is your general feeling about where we are today as a fellowship, and how do we become continually more attractive so more people out there who need to find the help can find us?
Yeah, that's been a concern of mine for a long time, but I've had a resurgence in inspiration recently relative to a lot of the young people that are coming in to the program now in their 20s and 30s and that are connecting. And I don't even call it clicks anymore, like we used to see years ago. And sometimes people coming in would feel it made them too awkward. They didn't feel like they fit in. But I'm seeing the beauty of a lot of these younger people now carrying the baton and working together and recognizing that fellowship is an important part of it, but working the steps and having a sponsor. And I know you're involved in a sponsor tree or chain, and that's the most beautiful thing that I've seen in this program in years. And I'm seeing a little more evidence of that. And I think that's going to help us grow. And I'm very, very excited for the future. The problem is we're still very deficient. I don't think there's enough people that work the steps. There's not enough sponsors. I mean, you can go to an AA meeting and, let's say there's 100 people there. And when it comes time, is anyone able to be a sponsor? 88% of the room will raise their hand, and half of them are 19 years and younger.
Yeah.
In our room, you might have 30 or 40 people on a Wednesday or Friday night meeting. And if that question is asked, it's the same one or two people, and they're overwhelmed, and there's just not enough out there. What helps us, though, I think, and I've always been a fan of this, is the dually addicted that come in. Those that have lots of recovery and other programs, usually AA, that come to us and they bring that into it.
Yeah.
And they bring the steps to us and they bring the big book to us. And that, I think, will continue to help us as we get more and more connected to the steps and, the sponsorship, because I think that's the key. We can't do this alone. It's a disease of isolation. You hear a lot to say, find a God of your understanding, find a guide of your understanding. There's a lot of people that have been down your path, and
Yeah.
they can tell you what to look for and help you through it,
Yeah.
and trust that process.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can't put my finger on why the deficient number of people who are willing to be sponsors. I guess it's because many people haven't worked the steps, and even though they may have a number of years of abstinence, if they haven't gone through the steps, it's probably a real deterrent to want to jump in. I don't know. I'm learning as I go, coming up on 5 years, and to me, I will tell you that being a sponsor and having an amazing group of sponsees, for me, it's the greatest gift this program has offered me. And there's countless number of gifts, from finding a higher power to connecting all over the place, meeting incredible people I would have never met. But the one-on-one relationship building and being a part of watching somebody who comes in like I did, completely torn apart, hopeless, every phase of life feels like an impossible task to turn around, and then to watch them turn it around and to bear witness to that is absolutely the best feeling in the world. And it reinforces my own recovery, because if they're doing it, then I got to keep doing it. Because if I go out and gamble, I got 7 guys who's got to go find a new sponsor because I'm back on step one and I sure can't help them. Right. So to me, it's selfless to be a sponsor, but it's also really selfish too, because it's a reinvestment in our own recovery, is the way I look at it.
It's an insurance policy, and it's beautiful, and it's so timely. A little plug for gamblersandrecovery.com and the audio files. The most amazing share on sponsorship is available now on the website. Chris N, coming up on 44 years at the time of this recording, has just nailed it, and the importance of it, what to look for, what a sponsor is and what a sponsor isn't. And it was just so beautifully done. So anybody in recovery, we implore you to take a look at that website. And also, latest breaking news, in the next week or so, we're going to be having a list of podcasts, including this very one.
Oh, very
And
nice.
that'll be available on the gamblersinrecovery.com website. So again,
Awesome.
it's a resource for anybody that's looking for recovery, whether it's meetings or podcasts or just recordings, some on specific topics, but most of them are on what we call the experience, strength, and hope shares. Hearing what things were like, what happened, and what it's like now.
Yeah.
And if you're on a walk, you can listen to what Eric has created here, or you can get onto the recordings on the gamblersinrecovery.com website. So there's some
Yeah.
amazing resources out there.
That's awesome. So I guess I'll go into the last maybe couple questions to wrap up. So you've done all these amazing things and you're 15 plus years into it and created this incredible resource with Gamblers in Recovery. I see you at multiple meetings, generally every week. There's like a never ending supply of Frank and recovery. But I also know you're always looking internally to figure out how do you somehow do even more. So is there one or two things right now that Frank is working on or has an eye on that you may want to be working on to, even if it's possible, enhance yourself more?
Well, I was afraid you'd ask that question because, again, when I did a recent share, you kind of put me to task about, what's the future going to look like, and since this is an honest program, it's important to call out myself. I'm a lot of smoke and mirrors. It appears that lots are going on, but I don't do hardly any heavy lifting at all in the program these days. And I'm just kind of sorting out what I want my life to look like. Yes, I'm involved in daily gratitude lessons, sending out readings, and I edit the recordings, but it's stuff that really doesn't consume a lot of time. But I know that consistency can easily be, confused as complacency, and I have to be careful that I need to be looking forward to. So there's some ideas that I have about maybe some putting together some character defect workshop on a regular basis, maybe having a Q&A session for new people to come in and just, have a group of people that have some time that will be there every week or something, and a newcomer can come, because you can't always do that in a meeting or after a
Mm-hmm.
meeting, but have that available, and that would make sense for Zoom. I'm also, because of the lack of sponsorship, it's something that I started years ago that didn't take off. It needed some more help, and I didn't get a lot of it. But a mentorship program, which would lead to getting a sponsor, because there's a lot of people that come in and there's a certain eagerness, but there's no sponsors, or they haven't been to enough
Mm-hmm.
meetings yet to find someone. But there's things that they can be doing,
Right.
and it may not be formally approved by Gamblers Anonymous, but we have a lot of free reign in terms. What I care about is effectiveness, and if it keeps people in long enough until they can get a sponsor. So those are the sorts of things that I want to work on. But to be totally honest, I haven't put much effort into it. But as a result of this being broadcast to the world, and I purposely exposed my shortcoming here now so that I'll have some motivation to put some more effort into that. So thank you for the question, Eric, and thanks for the inspiration to
No, that all sounds
all of you.
great. And if there's anything you need me to be a part of to help in any of that as you get it going, sign me up. I'll always
Thank you.
willing to
Very
help a
kind.
new adventure. So I guess I'll ask one final question because we all remember our day one, and as you articulated today, you had many day ones. And so for the person out there today who's struggling and they can't imagine their life without gambling, and maybe they've never tried, a recovery program, maybe they have, maybe they've been trying to quit on their own and they don't know how to stop gambling. What's your words of wisdom, the best you can, to that person of how to get started and how to really give it a chance? because as we are both living proof of, as addicted of gamblers as we were for as many years as we were, if we can change our lives, anybody could change their life. But it's impossible to see it on day one. So, what's your words of wisdom, Frank, for that person?
You know, when you asked me about a song, there's another song that I had thought of too, and it's a very simple one that everyone knows. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Hmm.
This program is really not that complicated. It's very simple. And if we do the hard work early on, there's a lot of streaming down, gliding and merrily doing it along the way. It's really pretty easy. It's smooth sailing. And all we have to do is just get through today. And when we start projecting into the future and having to do this for a lifetime, that's when we get ourselves in trouble. So the key is to get through today. Hang around the winners. Put yourself in the center of the pack. Go all in. We went all in with our money, with our lives, and everyone else. Go on all in with your emotions. You're here for you. The most important thing, if you change your life, you'll change the life everyone that's in contact with you. Take direction, okay? One thing many of you will always hear me say in meetings, that 2 7-year-old kids could have run my life better than I have my entire life, including these last 15 years in recovery, because they keep it very simple. We throw so many layers on this. Oh, well, Sally was mean to you. Well, then why are you still seeing her? Well, that's very simple. Oh, we have to come up with a million stories why we should still be seeing Sally. Stay away from unhealthy people. Stay away from toxic people. Hang around people that have what you want. It's okay to be a copycat. Do what they do. And you'll have a life that is beyond belief. Eric, when you talked about the joy that you feel in taking someone through the steps and watching them grow, you know what's happening at the same time? It's happening to you too. We can't see it within ourselves. Trust that process, and your life will be absolutely amazing. And again, one of the last things, and I say quite frequently too, and maybe it's a little disappointing and not as exciting to end a podcast as this, but Gamblers Anonymous or being in recovery does not guarantee that your life will get better. But I can guarantee you, it guarantees you that you'll deal with life better. You get this amazing set of tools that can get you through any challenge. I've used them, I've gotten through it, and my life is better because of that. Thank you.
The perfect ending. Well, thank you so much, Frank, for being with me on the Gambling Recovery Lounge. It's been a total pleasure. You are such a blessing in my life, and clearly, literally thousands of other people whose lives you've touched, continue to touch, and just thanks for changing the world. I mean, that's what you're doing every day, is changing the world. And if we have a lot more Frank S's, we're going to be going in a lot better direction. I love you for doing this. Any final thoughts you have for the audience?
Again, thank you for the kind words, not helping me with working on my humility, but I do have a healthy enough self-esteem that I can take those in and appreciate it. But just like you, Eric, it's very selfish. Being unselfish is one of the most selfish things that you can do. The joy and the meaning and the purpose we get in our lives when we help others ensures that our lives will remain amazing and continue to get better and better. So my hat's off to you and all that you do for so many others, including me. You are one of my biggest inspirations, and thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Frank. All right, that is a wrap on experience number 23 with Frank in the Gambling Recovery Lounge. If you have any comments or questions for me or for Frank, and I can pass that along to him, and we'll make sure we get back to you. But we always welcome any questions or comments that anyone has. In the meantime, thank you all for listening to experience number 23, and we'll be back with you shortly with experience number 24 in the Gambling Recovery Lounge. Have a great day.